So let me remind you what they've learned in grade one. So the first important thing that they learned was how to measure length and how they could use any measure. They could use ice cream sticks or they could use paper clips to measure straight lengths. So this was the idea that they had, that if they had a straight length, they could measure it using any unit of length. Now, what will happen in grade 2 is that the unit of length will either become very clearly, it will be defined to be maybe a meter rod, or maybe it will become a yardstick, or it will be a foot ruler, or it could be centimeters. So they'll get introduced to these ideas while they're measuring. But you should be clear about it that these are only changing. So you could have different sticks to measure the same length. So you could have a longer stick or a shorter stick to measure the same length. So you could have different kinds of sticks to measure the green length. So we are really measuring a length from A to B, and you can have different sticks to measure it by. But the length stays the same because that's really a measure of how far you have to walk from A to B. But the units, which is the length of the white stick or the blue stick or the red stick, it changes. And that's what will be the major difference between grade 1 and grade 2. Also, we'll be introducing this idea, although we talked a bit about it earlier in grade 1 also, of how to measure things which are not exactly along straight lines. So that's one important idea. Now, in terms of weight, so this is the concept of weight that they already had. So remember, for weight, they already know the meaning of heaviest and lightest, but you need to introduce this again to them and revise all these ideas. Don't assume what you taught them in grade 1A, grade 1, they'll actually know in grade 2, so you should revise all those concepts. But the other important thing is that remind them of the fact that and do these things again, that here they're using the unit of balls to measure A and B, right? And remind them of what we did, how we measured these balls. So, for example, here A is weighing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It weighs 6 units, whereas this weighs 2, 4, 6, 8. I think this weighs 8 units, and this weighs 2, 4, 6, and 7 units, right? So, also remind them that if they were to put, and they've done this experiment, if they were to put A and B, let's say A and C on the same on the same scale, what would happen is that A being lighter would go up and C being heavier would go down, and that's how we know that we are measuring something sensibly. So all these things need to be revised, and now the difference this time is that, again, just as for length, they'll actually figure out that there's a measure which is kg, or they'll have pounds, or they'll have ounces and grams and other such objects that they'll be measuring in various units, but the units are just changing. So you can have a fat unit like a kg, or maybe something a bit smaller, which is like a pound, or which is even smaller than which is an ounce, or even smaller, which could be a gram. So it's just changing how big something is, exactly like a meter stick or a yardstick or a foot ruler or a centimeter stick that you can make. I actually forgot, I should have told you that for a centimeter, instead of giving them a ruler, you could give them the intuitive idea that they can have a centimeter stick. So you can just cut off something which is a centimeter and let them measure it exactly like a foot ruler, a yardstick, or a meter stick. Okay, so in any case, so this is the major change that is happening now. The concepts still stay the same, and now another concept that will get introduced is that they can actually just read off from a dial a weighing scale instead of having to balance it on balance. Okay, so those are the two differences that will happen as we go through this chapter.